There's a show, it's called Fallout. Okay, what's it? It's about the end of the world. It's like Western sci-fi. It's like, it's good. I mean, you know. Oh, yeah. It makes me laugh. I have to walk out of the situation. Don't stand for it.
Someone will hold this while I fix this stand. Yeah. Because we were supposed to start like 5 minutes ago. They wanted Facebook land. Oh, okay.
Oh, no, it's a different.
Right. I'm good, thank you. Great help.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that before. I just was
It's okay, I didn't realize you were, yeah.
working.
Yeah, just.
Shabbat shalom, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're full of that. Full of Shabbos. You're full of Shabbat.
So you'll be hearing from me.
Better without the stand.
Alrighty. Well, this is real loud. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Good Shabbos.
As always, since we are in a different part of our synagogue this evening, now is a wonderful time. I don't know why, everyone flocked to the right this evening. It was just there are seats on the left side. It's not a segregated crowd here, folks. This is not Chabad, okay? We can all be together. But I want to say, just look to your left, look to your right. We just wish everyone around you a Shabbat Shalom. And Shabbat Shalom especially to Jeff, who is manning our Facebook, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone online who is with us tonight. I know this is a very special evening. So, give me 1 second. We turn now to our candles and wine, but actually, Alex, if you would like to come up with your wife and help lead the Shabbat candles, if that would be acceptable by you, that would be great. Please.
There are matches there. I don't.
Sorry, you got it. There we go.
Shabbat service tonight, so we can get to our special service tonight. But every week, we start with Psalm 133, Hine Matov U'Manayim, and we're going to do that tonight. Everyone singing. Here we go. Hine Matov U'Manayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Matov U'Manayim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Shevet Achim
folks. That's
They know it. Aye, aye, aye. You
okay.
can sing with
You
me.
can turn to 138 in your mind.
You want to know it? Aye, 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 lecha dodi. Aye, 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 likrat kalah. Aye, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Aye, 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 likabla. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad. V'yishme'anu el ha'meuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad. L'shemo tiferet v'letehila. Ay, 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 lecha dodi. Ay, 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 likrat kalah. Ay, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Ay, 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 likabla. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha. Yihi v'kol ha'baracha. Berosh mikren nesucha. Soma aseh b'machshava techila. Ay, 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 lecha dodi. Ay, 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 likrat kalah. Ay, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Ay, 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 likabla. Hitoreri, hitoreri. Ki ba'oreh kumi ori. Uri, uri, shir daberi. Toda Adonai, alayich nigla.
Please rise as we turn to the back of our service area this evening and welcome in Shabbat. Shalom, ateret bala, gam besimcha, ובצורה תוך אמוני הפסקולה בואי חלה, בואי חלה איי 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 לך דודי איי 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 לקראת כלה איי 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 בני שבת Ay, 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 likabla. Ay, 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 lecha dodi. Ay, 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 likrat kalah. Ay, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Ay, 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 likabla. Page 144, the Kaddish. There still is no pages. But you do have a few prayers in there. There's some Baruch Hu. You'll get them. You'll see them. They're in there. That's it.
Yikana, Yikana, Shemei Rabba, Yamad Ibrak, Rutev, Yamlik, Mafrutei, Bekayeho, Yomecho, Ukayedecho, Bek Yisrael. Agala, Agala, Ubizman Karim Imru, Amen, Yeshme Rabba Menorah, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, Yitbar, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalem, V'yitalam, Shemei D'Kurashat, V'yikol, Le'ila, V'yikol, V'ychata, V'yishirata, Tushbetata, V'nechemata, Damiram, V'yamam, Amen. We rise for the Baruch Hu.
That one you do have.
Page 146. You don't have a page.
You do.
La 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 la.
Ya la la ya la la la.
La about you call it? What do you want to do next?
The Shema.
Okay.
Or whatever you want to do. I was just,
That's fine. Page 152, let's all rise.
we all rise. Back up again.
It's Jewish calisthenics, up and down. Jewish calisthenics.
Please be seated and join with us for the Ve'ahavta. You can find it on that sheet in your printout that you all have. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם כראשים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Okay, so here's the deal, Kenter. We only have, there's an Amidah here, and there's an Aleinu, and there's a Mourner Kaddish.
All right, we'll do the Amidah.
Okay, so back up again. Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor HaNorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei HaKol זוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מקיים מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטעם מקלקל חיים בחסד, מקיים מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך כופרי ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, בשני עפר, מלחמות בגבורות. ata l'chayot v'etzim. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei ha'metim.
Stay standing for the Aleinu. You can find it on your printout.
Aleinu neshabeach, l'adon hakol, l'keinu l'yotzei breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adam, shelo samcho k'nukahem, v'nor aleinu k'chol ha'olam, ve'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, b'nei el, Ate ha'avim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, le'elech ha'aretz, v'yom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Because we are all currently standing, we are going to remain that way as we flip to the last page of your printout. You will see the mourner's Kaddish. I know today is certainly an evening of remembrance, but we do call out those in our community that are no longer here with us, that are currently in Shloshim. Think of Alex Forkosh, Sharon Solano, Ken Holtzman, and Maggie Glazer. We added that. And we will certainly remember them this evening, the 6 million who perished in the Holocaust, as well as those who were murdered on October 7th. We add to that list Irma Abravnel, Charles Amerstam, Pearl Bart, Philip Becker, Benjamin Badowski, Murray Committer, Leo Cowan, Herman Diskin, Simon Faber, Roy Foreman, Arnold Friedman, Edith Gelband, Jack Glazer, Monroe Goldstein, Herman Karp, Hyman Cones, Fanny Lefkowitz, David Miller, Reginald Nicholson, Blanche Nussbaum, Helen Pohl, Irene Pohl, Jack Portner, Harry Prusak, Aaron Rabinowitz, Alfred Ruach, Sarah Ross, Kate Schwartzberg, Jacob Silbert, Ann Smith, Seymour Stanton, Dorotha Stein, Doris Steinberg, Edith Stour, Herman Winton, and Margaret Zimmerman. If there are names you'd like to add to this list, please feel free to do so as my hand or my eye meets yours. We'll start on the left. Okay, big crowd. Nobody? Cantor?
No.
Okay. Our mourner's Kaddish, the words are found in your printout. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yiratei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayei chon v'yom echon, v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramah v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'rechu, le'ila min kol berachata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, damiran le'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim alinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, alinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Zichronam livracha. Tonight is certainly an evening of remembrance, and so may all of their memories be for us as a blessing. You may be seated. It is my distinct pleasure to call to the informal bima this evening as we transition to our service. Judge Ken Gottlieb, if you would join me. As you have all heard before, Ken plays a mean shofar. He can out shofar anyone this side of the Mississippi, as far as I'm concerned. But our shofar for us is an alarm. which I think many are used to when you're living in Israel, the alarms that have constantly been going off, and certainly the alarms emotionally and metaphysically here in our brains, in our minds, in our souls, all the alarms that are ringing for us today that something is not right. And so we sound this blast, not only to send an alarm, but to create a sense of awakening, not only out there, but within ourselves. May we further, I know we're all invested and we've all done our research, but may we be awakened tonight by the wonderful presentation that Carol Edelman has put together. I will leave it to you, Judge.
So you have to do the blast.
Okay.
The notes.
Tkiya Gdola. I'm told that the longer one plays the shofar, the quicker they get into heaven. That's what the rabbis say. I don't know. I will turn this over to our certainly our service leader, who has put this together, and we are so appreciative of her. And she is also a new board member, Carol Edelman. I am turning over the mic. It is all yours.
Thank you. Okay, can you all hear me? I'm pretty loud anyhow, without mics. I remember with the shofar blowing being in Israel several different times on Yom HaShoah, when everybody stands, everybody stops. It was a momentous moment of honoring the dead in the Holocaust and remembering the Holocaust, and I thank you, Ken, for bringing us that moment here tonight. And I thank everyone for coming, and apologize now for you having to listen to me. I remember my first trip to Israel. It was in 1966. Israel was 18. I was a little bit younger. We flew on El Al. When the stewardess announced that we needed to buckle up for landing, everybody clapped. At that moment, I thought, oh, everybody's clapping because it's been a long flight. It was my first flight. It was terrible, all those hours in the airplane. And they're happy to be here. But then the clap was followed by the crowd in the airplane starting to sing Hatikva, all on their own. It was a momentous moment. We deplaned. We walked down the steps. And I was surrounded, I looked around, and there were all of these men prostrating themselves, kneeling, kissing the ground. My father was one of them. He got up, we walked a few steps, he put his arms around me, and in one of the few times that he talked to me about the Holocaust, he said, "Hitler killed a lot of us, but he did not win." I grew up to become a Holocaust scholar and a Holocaust educator. I hoped, I believed in my core that, along with many of the survivors I talked to and worked with, that the Holocaust was a turning point, a pivotal moment in modern history. That the anti-Semitic genocide carried out by the Third Reich was so evil, so pernicious, that it would make anti-Semitism unacceptable, that it would end our marginalization, that it would eliminate the claims that we control the world, that it would eliminate the labeling of us as a dangerous race, a greedy, aggressive people that the world is better off without, and that would usher in a future of greater religious and racial acceptance so that Jews would never feel threatened again. I bare my soul to you now. For 3 decades, I was all over California teaching teachers about the Holocaust, lecturing in junior and high school, teaching college classes. but I was naive. I thought that the world would understand and learn. And now I know that anti-Semitism can sleep for decades, but it is a light sleeper. And it seems that over the last few years, it is reawakening. So here we are with Shomrim, guards at our door, worried about wearing Jewish stars and kippas in public, hearing chants supporting Hamas and the destruction of Israel, students telling us to go back to Poland, Columbia students, Ivy Leaguers with signs and chants, gas the Jews, 10,000 more October 7th massacres, Zionists don't deserve to live, and rape is resistance. I find it so hard to believe that only 80 years later, as terrible as the Shoah was, and as hard as I and my colleagues tried to teach the lessons of the Shoah to young people growing up, that we are still fighting the same evils today. Things are not all gloom and doom. The student protesters are a small percentage of the student body and alienating many of their fellow students and many Americans. Congress is right now passing a law on anti-Semitism. Universities are refusing to divest from Israel. And on a personal note, my husband and I got phone calls from several of our non-Jewish friends from California offering their love and support. But all of this turmoil, for me at least, makes tonight's memorial even more significant. On behalf of my father of blessed memory and my family, on behalf of all of you who, like my family, have endured losses from the Holocaust, and on behalf of all of the souls who perished in that murderous regime, I say with conviction, Hitler, even posthumously, will not win, not today. Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you. Oops. Thank you.
Literal mic drop. Thank you, Carol. That was
From my heart.
And it shows. We thank Carol for her dedication. Without her dedication and certainly the support of her husband Sam,
And the adult ed committee.
and the
Barbara
adult ed
Stanley,
committee.
yeah.
Yes, but this was Carol's brainchild, and doing something like this, she brings this ceremony with her from California. So thank you. I'd like to call up Agnes Borhegi, and keep in mind you can use either mic, either this one or that one. Okay, or there's a mic right there. Look at that.
I light this candle for the Jewish victims lost. To forget the dead would be akin to killing them a second time. Elie Wiesel wrote in his book Night. As I light this memorial candle, we vow never to forget the Jewish men and women who were martyred during the Holocaust. May we recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the richness of their lives.
And as I will say, and you repeat, we say, Zachor lo tishkach, and you say, we shall not forget.
I also would like
Please.
light this candle in memory of my family members. Unfortunately, a long list. My grandmother, Elizabeth Kovács, and my other grandmother, my paternal grandmother, Josephine Fisher, in memory of my aunt, Ilona Kovács, and my uncle, Ernő Kovács. They all perished in Auschwitz, or some of them in another camp. I also would like to light for in memory. Thank God my parents the list from here on survived. But my parents, my mother Lily Fisher, my father Laszlo Fisher, and my mother-in-law Irene Gisser, my late husband Michael Borhegyi, and my late life partner George Adler. Oh, I'm sorry. You are right. Just leave it in.
Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
We will always listen. For our next candle, we call up Sharon Edelman.
I light this candle for the 1.5 million Jewish children murdered. As I light this memorial candle, we remember and mourn the 1.5 million Jewish infants, children, and teenagers who were lost to us before their time. They were sorry. They were innocent children targeted for eradication only because they were born of Jewish parents.
Zachor lo tishkach.
I also light this candle in memory of my grandparents and their parents who survived, and they are the reason why I am alive today. It wasn't easy for them. My Oma did not marry for love. She married because my Opa had a way out of Germany. I like to think that eventually over time they found love together. On their honeymoon, my Oma did not look like the German idea of a Jew, so she got away with not wearing her yellow Juden star. And on their honeymoon on the train, my Opa was arrested for violating Nazi race laws. And my Oma had to return home and get her paperwork to prove that she was Jewish to get him out of prison. He still ended up in Dachau with his father, but because he had, I believe it was a cousin living here in the United States, he was able to get a visa and get him and his pregnant wife out of the country. Eventually, they were able to get their parents out, and we are one of the lucky ones. So I light this candle for them and the rest of the lucky ones, as well as the ones who did not make it.
Thank you. You have fantastic parents, by the way.
I know.
I'm sure. Sounds like it's genetic. John?
Good evening. I light this candle for the communities lost. Those of us who know Des and myself know that the Holocaust is not only tonight, but it's very, very special to us. We actually volunteer at the Holocaust Memorial several days a month, and we invite you to come to the memorial in Miami Beach. As far as my family concerned, they were German Jews, and we lost most of them. Fortunately, my father was posted by his company to England, and he survived, of course. I want to remember 3 members of the family. My grandfather's sister, whose name was Elsa Yuri, and those of you who've heard our talks know that Elsa Yuri was the Judy Blume of Germany, selling 7 million books. And she, because she was a famous writer, she didn't escape the Nazis, and she was sent to Auschwitz, and because she was over 65, there was no question, she went straight to the gas chambers. And then my grandfather's brother, Hans, what happened to him? Well, the Nazis said the Jewish doctors couldn't practice anymore. And he was so depressed, and this was his whole life, he was a bachelor, that he committed suicide, and we lost him as well. And finally, his younger sister went to Holland, like many Jews, believing that there was safety in Holland, and of course we all know what happened to the Jews in Holland, the same as what happened in Germany. I'd like to invite you, those of you who have this thing, to read with me. Do you see the part where it says, as I light this? Does anybody have this?
Everyone has one.
Okay. Could you read with me, please? As I light this memorial candle, we remember the holy communities of Am Israel. Their wisdom, knowledge, and their very existence were precious.
The lost to us weighs heavily. Our Holocaust Torah proudly displayed here is from such lost community. Rescue Holocaust Torahs in our memories of all we have left, those disappeared communities, that held their Torahs with care and read from them with devotion. Zachor lo tishkach.
We shall not forget.
You still like the... Jeannie, if you would.
For non-Jewish victims of the Holocaust. For non-Jewish victims of the Holocaust, as I light this memorial candle, we vow never to forget the millions of non-Jewish civilians, victims of the Holocaust, those disabled, gay, Roma, Sinti, Jehovah Witnesses, Polish civilians, and others who suffered persecution and death under the Nazi regime that deemed them unworthy to live. I would also like to light this candle for all those in memory of the many family members perished in different camps who I didn't know, and for my parents who survived. My mother went to England, my father went to the only country in the world that opened its doors, the Dominican Republic, and I grew up among refugees, Holocaust survivors, and people who came from Israel and Shanghai after the war.
Zachor v'lo tishkach. Stanley, if you would, please. Just remember to use the mic.
The heroes,
Just remember to use the mic.
the heroes of the Holocaust, those who resisted. As I light the memorial candle, we vow never to forget the heroes of the resistance. Jews, Jewish and non-Jewish, who fought the Nazi regime with both weapons and words. Those brave heroes give lies to the myth that Jews went to their deaths like sheep to slaughter.
Zachor v'lo tishkach.
I lost the Munchen family, the whole family. My mother's side of the family, my mother's grandmother, my mother's and I, uncles, aunts, spouses, children. They were all murdered in the Holocaust. I'm here talking to you because this is my roots. My roots in the Holocaust, the shameful Holocaust.
Thank you, Stanley. Alex?
I light this candle for the
Please, thank you.
I light this candle for the heroes of the Holocaust, those who rescued us, such as Joseph and Marie Hershes, which I will share with you in a few moments. Please read along with me at the top of the next page. We also vow never to forget the righteous souls, the heroes of many days, who rescued Jews and others fleeing from the Nazis. These heroes risked their lives and the lives of their families to hide, feed, and protect friends and even strangers in danger. They rescued tens of thousands of Jews. It's a comfort to know that there are those who will bravely choose to do good in times of evil and become, as Yahweh Hashem names them, the righteous among the nations.
Zachor v'lo tishkach.
We shall not forget.
Sam? Thank you, Alex.
My name is Sam Griscott, and I'd like the candle first. light this candle for those who fight Holocaust denial and distortions. Get it all on record now. Get the films, get the witnesses, because somewhere down the road of history, some bastard will get up and say that this never happened. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, commanding general of the Allied forces that defeated Nazi Germany upon touring Ohrdruf concentration camp in April of 1945. Our very modern being has been shaped by the Holocaust. Denying the Holocaust is to deny who we are. Therefore, we light this candle to honor all those who fight back with words and deeds against deniers.
Zachor v'lo tishkach.
I shall not forget. I light it because my family was pretty much destroyed. On my father's side, he is one of 7 siblings, and he's the only one that survived. I'm going to read an excerpt of one of those who died. One of the Jews captured in Donetsk, Bystrica area was Rav Samuel Judah Groskat. Just before he was taken out to be executed, he wrote the following letters to his sons as a last will and testament. He even included the text he wanted inscribed on the gravestone. Sections from his letter follows. By the grace of the Almighty, Friday, eve of Shabbos, Miketz, 5th day of Hanukkah, the eve of the new moon, 5705, in the prison of Bystrica. I was caught here on Monday of the weekly portion of Vayitzel, November 20th, according to their reckoning. In vain did I wait for my forged documents to save me, but finally, after many beatings, and after they saw that I was circumcised, I admitted everything. And now, this is a rabbinic homily. If the good Lord wants me to be among the millions of Jews who have been killed and slaughtered and who has offered their lives for the sanctification, then I am a Jew who believes that in the Lord, salvation and any evil thoughts or reflections I might have had. To the contrary, I hereby annul and have no value. I do not possess a prayer book containing the form of the last confession to recite the great confession in its correct form, but I will recite what I remember, and may it be accepted as though I had said it all in detail and with a proper intention, and as is done by good Jews. On request do I make of my dear son Nathan, Natu, Abraham, Liza, if the Lord allows them to survive the coming people alive, they should remember me on every possible occasion and should not forget the anniversary of the death of their dear mother, Rivka, the daughter of Rav Mordechai Aryeh, who died in her prime in the Jewish hospital in Budapest on Marshals and 35704. They should also remember their sisters, my beloved daughter, Yuta, Sarah, and Chaya, who were taken into captivity. Also, they should remember my father and mother-in-law from Brodizhov and our sins, all of them. They went into exile with all the Jews in a place where they will not be remembered or recalled, to be killed, to perish, to be smitten, and to be ashamed. I also ask my dear sons that they walk in the ways of the Lord and be kind to people. It is really unnecessarily for me to remind my sons and all the above, for the Lord has given them good sense, understanding, and intelligence. This was signed by Samuel Judah Prescott. The following is a text he asked to have inscribed on his tombstone. Remember, O my soul, to your proper rest. Naked and nude do I come forth from the womb, and now I return to the earth, an earth of filth, darkness, and gloom, of death, perishment, hurt, and shame. May the Lord preserve the surviving remnants which remain and hides from the evil devils. May he enough to say, cursed land, where blood is spilt, is split in every side and in every corner. Do not return empty without wrecking vengeance. Signed, Prescott. This was one of the 7 brothers and sisters that were killed.
Thank you, Sam. Barbara? He's already lit his candle.
Shabbat Shalom. So many of you already know I am the religious school director here at Temple Bethel. This year concludes my 32nd year teaching in Jewish education. But my day job, I teach high school social studies. This is my 20th year teaching. And many of you have heard me complain about the things that Florida has done wrong in the state with regard to education. But there are a couple of things that Florida has done right. We mandated many years ago, 30 years ago, to have Holocaust education taught in the public schools, age appropriate from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. We have done many wonderful things in the classroom. We have partnered with ADL, No Place for Hate, has popped up in surprisingly more and more schools across Broward. Every year I lead a workshop with about 500 kids to teach them how to be upstanders. And we have done great things. There's so much more to do. Just yesterday, we found a swastika engraved on a desk in the testing room. So we have so much more work to do. Sometimes it's daunting, but then I look at our future. These 2 beautiful young ladies are part of our confirmation class for next year. Am Yisrael Chai.
We light this candle for those who teach. As we light this memorial candle, we vow to honor and support those who keep the flame of the Holocaust alive now and will continue in the future after all the survivors are gone. Those who teach the lesson of the Holocaust, those who volunteer in many corners of the world, and those in our community who do what they can, lend their voices to fight hatred. The moral lesson of the Holocaust must be told and retold.
זכור ולא תשכח. Thank you, girls. Ruth?
I'm Ruth Gantman. I'm Nikolaya Lefkovich. My parents are Abe and Fanny Lefkowitz. And I want to share with you what I learned from them because they gave me the gift of life by surviving. And I want to tell you how wonderful they were. My mom and dad was the greatest love story I've ever heard. They treated each other so beautifully. They were so good to each other. They were respectful. We just had Passover, and I remember when I was 4 years old, I was too young to say the 4 questions. So my dad had me go to the door and open it for Elijah the prophet, and tell Elijah that there's plenty of food here for him if he needs it, and he can have anything he wants to drink. And I took that responsibility to heart my whole life. They were a wonderful pair of parents. They were so full of love and giving. When my uncle, who came out of Auschwitz, who was 6 feet tall, was 70 pounds, they took him in because they had a place for them. And when my mother's cousin, Regina, who I always called my Aunt Regina because she was such a wonderful woman to me, when Regina came to the house, my mom said, "Stay with us." And she said, "I can't, I'm with 5 people I survived the camp with." And my parents said, "Bring them. There's a place here. Whatever we have, we share." We Jews have a wonderful history. When our civilization, when they try to smash our civilization and the cracks appear, we light candles. We light. We bring light. And by you being here today, and by you bringing forth your Jewish tradition, you're resisting, you're fighting, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. We're sharing this together. I don't like this candle, I'm so task-oriented, I'm sorry. There's no easy way.
She got it.
So, for those who fight anti-Semitism today, you need a mic. Would you read this with me? I want to hear your voices too. Erwin Codler, former Canadian ambassador, because of anti-Semitism. But anti-Semitism did not die there. Because of the current explosion of anti-Semitism, we once again risk being abandoned today, just as we were during World War II. But because of the Holocaust, we have learned to stand tall and not be silenced by those who hate us. As I light this candle, we honor all of us who are strong together and are grateful for our non-Jewish friends and neighbors who support us in our struggle against that hate.
Zachor v'lo tishkach. Thank you, Ruth. Sam.
Not like me.
Just switch me.
This candle is for the tragedy of October the 7th. This is day 209. Day 209, where our hostages continue to be held. The last 24 hours have been very, very hard for me. I'm a college professor, and with other college professors over the last 20 years, many of us have been struggling against anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli activities and anti-Zionism that started out relatively small on a very few campuses, universities in Europe, and then into Canada, and then to the United States. And 2 universities, one on the East Coast in 2003, Columbia University, and a campus of the California State University, San Francisco State, in 2003. Events took place that became a herald of what we see today. It began gradually. Anti-Israel, anti-Jewish demonstrations. I was not at the Columbia event, but I certainly was involved with the San Francisco State event, as Carol and I were professors in the California State University system. And we were involved in developing a state of California, Cal State system Jewish studies program, using distance learning to create a major in Jewish studies. And we had worked with our colleagues at San Francisco State. They were there, my 2 colleagues, and were confronted by a crowd of Palestinian students and Marxists and people from the campus, including a few faculty who are anti-Israel, with signs that weren't anti-Israel, they were anti-Jewish. And over the years, from 2003, I became more and more involved in fighting these events on campus. Until today, we see October 7th. And what started out as a horrific event, 1,200 Jewish Israelis, Jews, Arabs, Bedouins, Druze, foreign workers, foreign guests, murdered, raped, killed, butchered, children butchered in a horrible 12-hour slaughter, akin to the slaughter, the beginning slaughter that took place in the Holocaust. And then 200 and some of our friends, loved ones, taken hostage, of which we think there are about 133, 132 remain, but we know for a fact that there are not so many. The Israeli government, as of this week, agreed to a ceasefire, agreed to reduce the number of hostages because Hamas could not come up with 40 live men, women, and children who were not combatants. And they reduced it to 33, and Hamas still has not agreed. Nevertheless, we see continued, after these events, we see continued demonstrations on college campuses that Carol referred to in her address, the signs not talking about Israel, but talking about Jews. Send the Jews back to Poland. Send the Jews back to the gas chamber. These are the signs that are being done on college campuses, and not just on campuses, everywhere. So yesterday, I spent 3 hours at an academic faculty senate meeting in our home university, confronting a resolution to divest, to call upon Israel to have a ceasefire, the genocidal Israel, to have a ceasefire, and to divest, the university to divest from Israel, etc. And I spoke after 3 hours of Senate hearings. I was given 5 minutes, and I spoke against this. And a few hours later, we get a notification from the president that a series of anti-Semitic events had taken place on campus, vandalism, destruction of property, hate speech written all over the place. So this is an amazing horror that keeps on happening over and over, and not just to our brothers and sisters in Israel. It is now happening to Jewish communities everywhere. On October the 7th, we lost very close friends. One of the people murdered was Vivian Silver, a Canadian Israeli who Carol and I became very friendly with when we were on sabbatical in 1988, and we were in Ulpan with her, and we went to dinner often. She was a phenomenal photographer, and she eventually would go on to be one of the leaders of one of the most important of the NGOs supporting Palestinian rights in Israel, Beit Tselem. And she lived in Kibbutz Be'eri and was murdered on October the 7th. We thought for many, many, many weeks that she was a hostage, but finally her body was recovered. And then our colleague, Ilan Troen, a professor of Israel Studies from Bar-Ilan University, historian, also a professor and head of the Israel Studies program at Brandeis University, a colleague who I've taught with many, many years. He and I fought battles against the American Anthropological Association, the Modern Language Association, a whole host of different professional organizations which were going to censor Israel. And we fought together against it. Well, I spent many happy hours with his daughter and his son-in-law, both phenomenal musicians. They played, we ate, we enjoyed their children. And on October the 7th, his daughter, Devorah Matis, and son, Shlomi Matis, beautiful souls, died protecting their 16-year-old son in their kibbutz shelter. They threw their bodies over him. The gunshots went in, killed both of them, and wounded the son. And for 16 hours, the son, Elan's grandson, was on the phone with Elan, letting him know what was happening until they were rescued. 16 hours. So, in honor of October the 7th, we remember the many struggles faced by Israel since its rebirth in 1948. On October the 7th, our Israeli brothers and sisters, both Jewish and Arab, were brutalized, sexually assaulted, murdered, and taken hostage. By a group who in their very own charter call for the annihilation of all Jews. I light this candle for those murdered so brutally and wantonly October the 7th, and for the IDF soldiers who have perished fighting to save our homeland. May their memories be for a blessing. And before we say Lo Tishkach, for those of you who have not seen it yet, you must see Sheryl Sandberg's documentary, Scream Before Silence. It's free on YouTube. You must see it, and you must send the web connection to everyone you can think of, especially everyone on college campuses today. The name is Sheryl Sandberg, who was from Facebook. It's her documentary. The documentary is called Scream Before Silence. You will find it very difficult to watch, but you must watch it. Yes. Yes, please. You. Oh. Zachor lo tishkach. You shall not forget.
Cantor?
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to speak for a few minutes. I asked Carol if I could speak for a few minutes, and she said I could. I'll try to make it fast. I told Carol I've been blessed to have two very, very close friends in my life who were survivors. You know, you don't get many friends who are really great friends. Both of these people were great friends of mine. And I've spoken about my one friend named Hardy, who was from Berlin, Germany. I've spoken about her many, many times in my adult class. She was quite simply the most amazing woman I've ever known. And I'm just going to tell you her story real quick and my interaction with her. Hardy came from a very wealthy family in Germany and Berlin. Her father owned a factory where he made fancy lamps that were sold throughout Europe. He employed 600 people. And one day Hardy came home from school. She was in high school, and she was an only child, and she lived kind of like in the Park Avenue of Berlin. They had a beautiful, beautiful home, beautiful apartment. And she came home and everything was ransacked. All the art was taken off the walls. The apartment was empty. And she never saw her parents again. That was it. She never saw them again. And she later learned that they were killed in mobile killing vans that they were using at that time. So Hardy didn't know what to do. She went to the foreman of her father's factory, told him what she had found. She asked if she could stay with him, and he let her stay there for about 2 nights. Then on the 3rd night, he said to her, listen, I can't keep you here, because if they know that I'm hiding a Jew here, my whole family will be killed. So he put her out in the street. Hardy was out on the street by herself. She was sleeping on the park bench, and a few days later, she was picked up and she was sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp. where she lived for the next 3.5 years. And out of 89 people in her family, she was the only one that survived. Now, I know her story very well, I can tell you, because I met Hardy in 2002. I met her at my mother's funeral, believe it or not. I had never met her. She was very good friends with my mom. My twin brother knew her for years, because they both lived in Philadelphia. I never met her until that day. And from that day on, we became great friends, and I talked to her every Friday for the next 10 years. Every Friday I would call her before Shabbat. We would talk for about an hour. We talked about everything. And it's almost like Tuesdays with Maury. I wish I had recordings of my discussions with her. We discussed everything. So I just want to tell you some of the things that she said to me through the years. First of all, you always hear people say, they ask, where was God? Where was God? Hardy was a devout woman. She went to synagogue every Shabbat. She said that God was there. She said God was there every moment. And I said, Hardy, how can you say that? She said, well, everything that happened was supposed to happen. This was her belief. She said, everything that happened was supposed to happen. And I said, how can you say that? And she would tell me the horrible things she saw. I mean, she told me stories. She was in Ravensbrück, a women's concentration camp, and the guards brought out, one day they brought out like these carrying things, or like you put gym equipment in, like, and when you're in high school in gym, and they opened it up, and they had live babies in there. And they played a game of soccer with Jewish babies, kicking them around. And the women were standing there, and they were all naked. And if you started to cry, if they saw a tear in your eye, you were killed. And Hardy survived that. And she told me that. And I said, Hardy, I've never read anything like this. She said, no one survived. She was one of the very, very few people that survived. She was one of 89 people that survived. But she said that God was there, and this was all supposed to happen. And she believed in her heart that it was all supposed to happen so that after 2,000 years, the Jews would go back to Israel. She said it took something of this magnitude to get the Jews to go back to Israel. And she wanted to go to Israel, but her husband, who I believe held the record, he survived 6 years in a concentration camp, from 39 to 45. He had a sister that survived and came to America, so he insisted on coming to America. So Hardy came to Philadelphia, and that's how I got to know her. So different things. And she also told me a few things over and over again. She said, believe your enemies. She stressed that. She said, believe your enemy. Said a lot of Jewish people like to kind of put a glossy, rosy picture on things. She says, no, believe your enemy. So she was always saying that. And sometimes I'd be at her house and we'd see someone on TV or a radio talk show host, and she would turn to me and she'd say, what does that person know? Was he ever hungry? So she was always looking. She says, was he ever hungry? What does he know? So, you know, these are just things you have to look at. And I would say this, Hardy was one of my two friends who's a survivor, one of my two great friends. My other friend was Andy Hartman, who some of you here knew. And Barbara knew Andy Hartman. And I think, Dodie, maybe you knew him too. Andy Hartman was a beautiful, beautiful man. Andy Hartman survived as a 9-year-old, one of the very, very few children that survived. And he was from Slovakia, and his father was a farmer. And I know both of their stories because I talked to them for hours. I would have lunch once a month with Andy. He would call me up and say, come on, we gotta have lunch. And we would go have pizza or Mexican food. And I would talk to Hardy every week, so I knew their stories inside out. And Andy and Hardy had some similarities. They were different personalities, but they were both extremely patriotic, and they loved America. And they would never get tired of telling you how great it was to live in America. Believe it or not, they both were very strong proponents of Jews having arms and being able to shoot. They said we should all know how to protect ourselves. And in fact, one year on my birthday, I have a twin brother, of course he has the same birthday. Hardy wanted to buy my brother a gun for his birthday, and he talked her out of it. But you know, they were both, and Andy told me, he was drafted into the Army, he was in the United States Army. He told me one of the greatest days of his life was when he learned to shoot. So for Jews who went through that, to be defenseless was a terrible thing. They always wanted to know how to protect themselves. One of the nicest things that happened with Andy, just about 2 months before he passed away, He called me up one day and he said he was invited to speak at this middle school, a charter school in Coral Springs, and he wanted me to go with him. So I went with him, and he spoke to the 7th and 8th grade, and there were very few Jewish kids there. I don't even know if there were any. And he spoke to them about his experiences, and he told them to always accept each other and to be kind to each other, and he was against bullying, and he told them the story of how he survived. His story was amazing. Rabbi, I'm almost done. Okay? Okay. I think he's giving me that. Okay. Andy told them the story of how he survived. His 2 sisters were killed in Auschwitz. His parents were killed in Auschwitz. But the Nazis came into his town and they just started shooting everybody one day, just out of the clear blue sky. And Andy ran into the woods with his oldest sister. He was 8 years old, she was 22. And she and her fiance ran in the woods with him. They ran into the woods and they ran to a farmhouse. And they knocked on the door. And they told the farmer, they said, "We're Jews, they're shooting everybody. Everybody's getting killed. Can we hide here?" And the guy, and I heard the story so many times, I knew his name, Mr. Chuvala. Mr. Chuvala said, "Wait here, I'll go ask my wife." He came back a few minutes later, he said, "Yes, you can hide here." He said, I'll build you a hiding place. And he built them a hiding place in his barn. So when Andy spoke to these middle school children, he told them all, he said, there's going to be some time in your life where you are confronted with a moral dilemma and you don't know what to do. And he said, I hope you remember the story of Mr. Chuvala and have courage and do the right thing. And Andy had Mr. and Mrs. Chuvala enshrined in the righteous, at Yad Vashem. And he got all the information, and their grandchildren, they were no longer alive, but their grandchildren would come to visit him. And they would come out to Tamarack, where Andy moved, and I got to meet them. And they liked going to the hockey games. He went to the Florida Panthers hockey games with them. So, what can I tell you? Andy, I learned a lot from him. And one of the things, he just took joy in simple things in life. And he would tell me, he said, what the 2 greatest things I enjoy are? Having a slice of pizza, he told me that, and he said, and driving my car. He said, I can't believe I have such a beautiful car. So, both of these people were incredible. They both had a great impact on my life, and I will never forget them. And I wanted to just say 1 or 2 things about another person or two. Many of us knew Bella Deutsch, who used to come here on Friday night. Yeah, right? And Bella was an incredible character from Hungary. Bella was the youngest of 7 children, and he came from a religious background, and he didn't set foot in a synagogue for 60 years after the Holocaust. He couldn't go into a synagogue. He lost all his faith in God. And then one of his neighbors said, you should come with me to Temple Bethel. Maybe you'll like it. She brought him 1 week, and after that he came every week for, I don't know, the next 7 or 8 years or something like that. And he was the one that started standing up and acting out B'Shamru. And that's why we do it here. Bella acted out B'Shamru, and we did it. And I remember Bella, I would get here early on Friday night. He would like to come in my office and talk to me. And he spoke to me in Hebrew. And I remember the last week I saw him, he pulled out a picture from his sport coat. And he showed me a picture. It was in plastic. It was of his family. And he was just a little boy. He was like 6 years old. And it was one of those formal pictures. There they all were. And he started crying. He was very emotional. He just started crying. And he's yelling out Hebrew to me, and I couldn't get it. I said, Ma ta'omer, what are you saying? He said, Hem chashvu shehaya mayim. They thought it was water. That's what he was yelling to me. They were all gassed. They thought it was water. And Bella used to tell Rabbi Tufts, I have a big problem with God. He used to say, I have a big problem with God. And Rabbi Tufts would say, so do I. And we would all talk about it. So I don't know if we have any answers to all of this, but I just want to mention a few other people. I guess the answer is to remain strong. To remain strong and have faith, do the right thing, and that's about it. The other people I wanted to mention in our congregation, we have a dear friend, many of us know Eva Abramczyk. Eva is at home these days. She can't get around too well anymore, but Eva survived. And she has an amazing story. Eva is an amazing woman. And I know we had a wonderful man who used to come here on Friday night, he passed away a few years ago, Michael Gluck. And he was the father of Nori Gluck, all right? And his granddaughter, Bree. I did her wedding a few months ago, Bree and Jonathan. So Michael Gluck was an amazing guy. He survived as a 14-year-old in Hungary. And he survived by eating coal, believe it or not. He decided somehow he knew if he ate coal, he would be all right. And that's what he did. And I also wanted to say, there's a woman in our temple, Ruth Halpern, who I see once in a while. I saw her at the Seder, and I know her husband was a survivor. And I think his name was Joe. I can picture him, but I never really talked to him too much. So we're going to say that for Ruth Halpern's husband, okay? So we remember, we're strong, and we must be strong, we must go on, okay? So I'm going to go to candle 11. Thank you for letting me speak. I hope I didn't take too much time. All right, candle 11. We're all going to light candles there in the middle. So if everybody wants to get up, anybody who wants to light a candle, let's do it. Come on, don't be shy. We're going to light candles in the middle. Please. Not yet, Rich. And I'm going to say, as we light these candles, we commit ourselves to responsibility, thanks, Barb, for one another, to build on this earth a world that has no room for hatred, no place for violence. Together we pray for the strength to fulfill this vow. We accept the challenge to become beacons of light and builders of peace. Okay? Now, we're going to sing Anima Amin, which means I believe. These are the words of Maimonides. Let's all sing together. Am Yisrael Chai. 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 My friend Martha, we have to remember your parents, Ben and Rose Selesky, who were both survivors of Auschwitz. We remember them. All right, thank you, everybody. Now we're going to have our speaker, I believe.
I'm not the speaker, but I want to tell you about the speaker.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you all for being here with us. Around the first of the year, Carol Edelman and I decided that we wanted to bring a memorial program to Temple this year. And we discussed it with Rabbi and Temple President, and I said, I'll ask around, I'll see if people know anyone that they recommend for a speaker. That very week at Shabbat services, one of our longtime members, Nancy Badian, who's here tonight, was there, heard me talking about this, came to schmooze with Stanley and I at the ONED, and said, I think you should meet my cousin, Alex Metzger. I said, may I take his phone number? Did I call him? No. About a month passed, and my own cousin, Linda, forwarded me an email that was from the Arizona Jewish Historical Society. She attended a lot of their lectures. The email was a listing of speakers that they had recent speakers in the past year. And I scanned the list. I don't know why, I didn't know the people, but there was the name Alex Metzger. And I said, how can this be? Now 2 people have suggested that I contact Alex Metzger. So it was time to pick up the phone. He was so gracious and charming. He had a lot to say. We agreed to meet, and he talked to my son-in-law's high school class. And of course, we asked him to speak with us tonight. He told me a little bit about his story, and you'll hear the rest. The Arizona Jewish Historical Society, when they listed his name and what he would be speaking about, after the name Alex Metzger, they said, tough times don't last. Tough people do. I think you'll agree after you listen to Alex Metzger.
Thank you for that kind introduction. As a matter of fact, my wife Roberta is sitting here, and I just returned from Arizona. We were there this past weekend once again. We have a daughter who lives in Arizona, so we get out there frequently. First of all, I want to tell you, it's indeed an honor to be here and speak to you tonight. And I say that for various reasons. I do a lot of speaking about the subject, but predominantly to young kids in school, 4th and 5th graders. It's very rare I see a room full of adults. Here I think I'm preaching to the choir. I think one of the things we need to learn to do is not speak to ourselves about ourselves. We need to get the message out to other groups. We should try to get the message out to civic associations, churches, or anyone that's interested in the program. Because we all know the stories, and I think we need to spread the word. And that's the best way that we can keep the memories alive and share the stories. Let me begin about my background. My parents were both born in Germany, and during the late 1920s and early 30s, when Hitler was rattling his sword, as I put it, people left Germany and started moving west. They wound up and settled in Brussels, Belgium, and they had a home in Brussels. The Nazis invaded Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg on May 10th, 1940. My father was picked up on the street that day, never to be seen again. My mother decided she wanted to try to find her way to Great Britain, because Great Britain said anybody living in mainland Europe who's threatened by what's going on or could be happening shortly is welcome to come to Great Britain and be safe. Of course, this is before the Blitzkrieg. My mother left Brussels, and if you're familiar with the outline, Brussels is roughly the shape of a fist. Brussels would be right in the middle of your fist. She started heading north towards the English Channel to try to get to Great Britain. She was
and pregnant at that point. As she got to a town called Bruges, I decided I wanted to see the world. She didn't know what to do. She was in labor. She saw a convent, went into the convent and explained the situation. And I was delivered at the convent in Bruges, Belgium. Thereafter, she left and didn't know what to do and decided to go back to Brussels to her home. I was approximately 2 weeks old, and my mother was walking with me on the street. Apparently I was crying, as any 2-year-old might do. And a woman stopped her on the street, and she asked, "Why is your baby crying?" And my mother said, "He's a newborn, I have no money to feed him." So she said, "Can I ask you a question?" And my mother said, "Yes." She said, "Are you Jewish?" My mother said, "I am." So she introduced herself as Marie Harrison and said, "I live around the corner here. Let me take your child, and you come visit him anytime you want." And my mother made a decision and gave me to Marie Harrison's. Marie Harrison was married to Joseph Harrison, and they were devout Catholics. Nobody knew that she was not pregnant, because in those days in Europe, people who were pregnant didn't necessarily show that they were pregnant. They just gave birth automatically, and that's the way things worked in Europe. And they didn't have gender identification parties. All of a sudden, I was there, and everybody assumed I was their child. Joseph Marie Harrison raised me from 1940 until the end of the war. My mother used to come to visit occasionally, and they told me that this is your Aunt Rose. I never knew the difference, and of course, I accepted it. I went to church every Sunday with Joseph and Marie, and I started going to school in Brussels as Joseph Marie's child. After the war, I got hit with what I call the double whammy. Number one, Aunt Rose who comes to visit you is not your Aunt Rose, she's your Mother Rose. And number two, you're not Catholic, you're Jewish. By then, I was 5 or 6 years old, and I gotta tell you, what talk about blowing your mind, what do you believe or what don't you believe? At that point in time, my mother had remarried since my father had disappeared, as I said, in 1940. And my stepfather was in the military and was reassigned from Belgium to go back to England, to London. So she finally did find her way to London. And in 1947, we left Brussels and went to Brussels. In 1949, we came to the United States and settled in New York City. Basically, I consider myself growing up in New York. I went to elementary school, junior high school, and college in New York. And I didn't stay in contact with the Harrisons. Obviously, I didn't know much what to do. I was a 6 or 7 year old at the time. And you just don't know. My mother didn't want to stay, apparently didn't stay in contact and shared very little with me. As a matter of fact, she hardly ever spoke to me about her wartime experiences. And it really created a terrible situation. I did not necessarily have the best relationship with her because she became very protective. If I wanted to go out to play, she wanted to know who you're going with, where you're going to be, when will you be back. As I say, at this point in time, I can understand why she was so protective, but it made it very difficult growing up. And I somehow made it through and survived all that. After college, I was in the Army during the Vietnam crisis. I was never shipped to Vietnam, but I did stay here in stateside. The late 1960s, you may recall, there was a book called Roots, and it became a TV series. Alex Huxley wrote a book called Roots. Yes. I got hooked into Roots, and all of a sudden I decided I wanted to trace my roots. I knew nothing about me. All I knew was my father's name. I had no idea where he was born, what his date of birth was. And I decided I wanted to trace my roots. That summer, my wife Roberta and I decided to go back to Belgium to trace my roots. And I had no idea where to go, where to start, what to do. Those of you who are in New York may know this, but Grand Central Station at one point in time had a claim to fame that they had more telephone directories than any place else in the world. I went to the AT&T Grand Central Station. I asked if I could see a book from Belgium, and they gave me, put me in a room. Unbeknownst to them, I tore out the page. All the nurses. Now, what's interesting, with the phone books in Brussels or Belgium, they only put the person's last name, no first name, their street address, and a phone number. So I had about a dozen Harrisons. I didn't know where to begin. When my wife and I got to Brussels, we went to the American Embassy. I had my passport. I went in there and showed them that I was an American citizen. And they said, "Can we do anything for you?" I said, "Yes. I'd like to have someone who could speak English, French, and Flemish." Flemish is a language you speak up in Bruges, which basically is a bastardized French. It's a combination of Dutch, French, and German. And the young lady said, "I can do those calls for you." I said, "Do me a favor, call up people here at the Harrisons and ask them if they know Joseph and Marie Harrisons." I said, but start at the bottom of the list and work your way up. She made the first call, and she was talking to this person for a while, and she shook her head to me, "No good." She made the next call, and she had a big smile and gave me a thumbs up. She said she wants to know who wants to know Joseph Marie Harrison. I said, "Tell her Alex Harrison's is here." Remember, my wartime name was Harrison's, not Metzger. So when this young woman said, "Alex Harrison wants to speak to you," she said, "Where is he?" She said, "We're at the American Embassy in downtown Brussels." She said, "I live about 20 minutes away. Why don't you send him over here? Here's my address." My wife and I went to meet Denise Harrisons. Denise was a contemporary of mine, about my age, and she said, "You and I used to play together." The fact of the matter is, I don't recall, but she said so, and we started speaking. And I only have one picture of Joseph Marie Harrison's, which I guess you can't really see very well here. I can describe it to you. This is Joseph Harrison's, Marie Harrison's, and his little boy, about 3 or 4 years old, walking down the street with him. That's me. Anyhow, I showed it to Denise to verify who I was. She looked at it and she said, "I believe you." And she also told me that Joseph had a brother, Francois, who was still alive and living in Brussels. So I asked her his address and she gave it to me. The next day, Roberta and I hired a driver and we went to, I had my mother's address, or my parents' address in Brussels. We saw the house that they lived in, and we went to the Harrison's house around the corner. When I got out of the house, when I got out of the car, I told my wife, Roberta, "Stay in the car." The driver got out and stood by the door, and I started taking pictures of the house. This elderly woman, about 90 years old, she could barely walk, she had a dog and a cane, could barely walk, and she started talking to the driver, and the driver said to me, "Sir, she wants to know why you're taking pictures here." So I said, "Tell her I used to live on the 2nd floor where that green awning is. I used to live there." And she looked at me and said, "Are you Alex?" That's in 1983. I said, "How do you know my name?" She said, "Harrison's used to live there, had a son Alex that died after the war. If you used to live there, you must be Alex." I said, "Well, I didn't die, I'm here." And that makes the hair back to your neck stand up. We then went to visit Francois. My wife speaks a little bit of French, and we found the building he lived in. We rang the bell on the 2nd floor. The window opened up, and an elderly gentleman with long white hair stuck his neck out and said, "Can I help you?" And my wife said, "Are you Francois Harrison?" She said, "Yes." She said, "Could you come down here? We'd like to speak with you." He came down, I showed him this picture, and I said to Roberta, "Ask him if he recognizes anyone in this picture." He said, "Yes, that's my brother and my sister-in-law." She said, "I don't know who that is that's walking with him." I said, "That's me, Alex." He said, "No, you're not, you're dead." And I said, "I'm not dead." So 2 days out, 2 people tried to tell me I was dead. We had a little conversation, and at one point in our conversation, I said to Roberta, "Ask Francois, what happened to his long red hair?" I remember it was a red hair. I had an Uncle Francois red hair. She said to him, "What happened to your red hair?" He looked at me and said, "If you know me as a redhead, then you're Alex." So that was a very interesting experience we had on our visit back to Belgium. I basically did not speak about my background. Not many people knew my background, that I was a hidden child. And I do recall from when I was in front of the Harrison's house, the church we used to go to, I described it to the driver. I said, this road bends around to the right, there's a big square, and on the left-hand side of the square, there's a lot of steps, there's a church there. And he said, I don't think so, sir, but you may be right. So I said, do me a favor, drive very slowly, I'm going to walk. I used to walk there every Sunday to church. And as I described it, this opened up and there was a church building. We went into the church, and a rector came to us and wanted to know who we were and what we wanted. So the driver, who spoke French obviously, he said that this young man used to be a parishioner here. And he said to me, what's your name? I said, Alex Harrison. He said, are you Joseph Marie's son? I said, yes. Obviously, they were very well known in the church, and I established my relationship. I didn't do much about this for several years, and it wasn't until sometime during the 1990s. I was very active at our temple. I was on the board of directors. The rabbi knew my background, and he and I had a very close relationship. Every Yom Kippur, excuse me, the afternoon, the rabbi used to have a program, What Does Judaism Mean to Me? And he asked me to be one of the speakers. First 1 or 2 times I turned him down. Finally I said I had to get up. I decided it was time for me to, quote, get out of the closet and share with the audience, the members of the temple, my background, that I was a hidden child during the war, which of course no one in the audience knew. I shared with them what happened to me and how I was a hidden child coming from Belgium. And I decided at that point in time I was going to do more research. And that leads me into coming to Florida during the early, 18 years now, Roberta? My historic is sitting there. And during the pandemic, I had a lot of time to do a lot of research. And I got hooked. And once you start this program, I found various sources. There was an article in the paper appearing in the Palm Beach Post. I'll read the headline to you. It says, Nazi archives yield hidden stories of Holocaust. I read this story and they talked about Bad Arcelon. Bad Arcelon is a town or a city, I guess, in Germany that accumulated literally millions of pieces of information about people. Now, 6 million Jews were killed. However, before they were executed, apparently, the Germans used to question them, ask them about their siblings, their parents, their names, and any relatives they had. And Bad Arcelon collected all of these names, and they've got these archives. I didn't know whether I could believe them or not. I went on the computer, as the article pointed out, and they said, what do you want to know? I said, I'm trying to find my roots. They said, what's your name? I gave my name. He said, please hold on for about a minute or two. About 30 seconds later, they came to me and they said, were you born in June 17, 1940 in Bruges, Belgium? I said, yes, how do you know? And they said, this is Bad Arcelon, it's our business to know these things. Based on my name, they immediately tracked me down and found me. I told them I was trying to find information about my father. And they sent me a lot of material. The other source of information, which was a great source, was the Red Cross. Red Cross has a tracing service, which I understand is still active today. They're headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. I contacted the Red Cross, their tracing service, and I told them I'm trying to find my family history. Could you help me? And they said, what do you know so far? We'll see what we can do for you. And they said, give us about 2-3 weeks, or it could be 2-3 months, or it could be a year. And I was still living in New Jersey at that point in time. After we moved here to Florida, I was living here about a year or two. I got a call one day, and this young lady says, I'm calling for the Red Cross Tracing Service. I said, what's that? I'd forgotten all about them. They said, we have some information for you. Are you looking for information on Ludwig Metzger? I said, yes, I am. She said, let me send it to you. I said, where are you calling from? She said, I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida. I said, don't send it to me. Give me your address, I'll get it. I was there like 5 minutes flat. And they sent me, in essence, all of this information. They had information which is incredible. In here were documents about my father and my father's family. I finally found out his date of birth. I finally found out where he was born, his parents' name, obviously my grandparents. And I did a lot of research and a lot of studying, and I was able to put together my roots, so to speak. And the more I looked into it, the more services I found. And another service that I would recommend anybody to look in, if you're looking for any information about your family, there's a webpage called Jewish Gen. That's all it is. Just put www.jewishgen and put in your name and see what they come up with. You'll be amazed. And you get all these pieces of information. It took me a couple of years to put it all together, but obviously I found it very worthwhile. I was able to come up with lots of information. I want to take you back for a moment, if I could, to when Roberta and I went to retrace my roots in 1983. We were at my mother's house for dinner, and she says, "What are you doing for your vacation this year?" So I said, "We're taking a different vacation." She said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I'm going to Belgium." I said, "Why are you doing that?" So I said, "I want to find out my roots. I want to find out, my family." So on the way out, she gave me a box, about the size of an 8.5 by 11 box. And she says, "Open this when you get home." Of course, I opened it as soon as I got into my car. And in here were 12 letters. These were letters that were written by my father that he sent to my mother. Now, unbeknownst to many people, the Red Cross acted as a mail carrier. They would deliver mail to people in work camps. My father was in 5 or 6 different work camps in France. They would take mail out, deliver it to the outside world. They were a mail carrier. I could not read these letters because they were written in the old European slant penmanship. There was no way I could read it. And I decided I needed to get translated. I called, at that time, my brother-in-law was a professor at, of all places, Columbia University. And I asked him to come over to the house. I needed to ask him something. Now, he was my brother-in-law, but he had no idea I was a hidden child. I had to give him a quick 10-minute background, and I showed him these letters. I said, "Can you do me a favor? Do you know anybody in the Romance languages at Columbia? Maybe they can get some help to translate these letters." He said, "Give me one of your letters, I'll see what I can do." 2 days later, Bruce called me up. He said, "Give me the rest of your letters. Professor so-and-so wants to see you." He was teaching a graduate course in European Romance languages at penmanship. He offered the letters to graduate students. If anybody translate these letters, you don't have to write a thesis to get your master's degree. So we had a win-win situation. I have copies of these letters here with their translations. The original letters I donated to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And when you read these letters, it's incredibly heartbreaking, some of these, how my father describes the treatment that the people had, or the non-treatment they had, and how he was looking to get some help. The other thing that I found out during my research, when you see pictures of people being herded into cattle cars, the Germans knew exactly who was going into which cattle car. They kept records. I mean, obviously, the Germans were able. I came up with this, and I can read this to you. It says, transport from September 11th, 1942, from Drancy, which is a work camp in France where my father was held, to Auschwitz. And they had 1,026 names in here. Open it up, and there's my father's name. It's interesting how they kept records of who was going into these cars. I have a theory as to why this was happening. I think the underlings in these work camps were keeping these records to show their superiors a good job they're doing in the hopes of being promoted. At least that's my theory. And can you imagine what they would do if they had cell phones today or computers? This was all done by hand and then later transcribed. But I got all of these information from different transports and different dates where he was being shuttled from one work camp to the other. And I think I did a complete job and did a thorough research. Excuse me. Now, I get asked to make a lot of presentations. I usually can do 2 to 3 a week. As a matter of fact, Monday I'm doing 2. And usually it's the grade school kids. And I begin my presentations by asking a simple question. Has anybody in this audience never seen a Holocaust survivor? And about half the audience will raise their hand. I then say, I disagree with all of you. You're living in southern Florida. Florida, California, and Texas has the biggest group of Holocaust survivors in the country. And if you're telling me you never saw one, I don't believe you. Look around this room. Do you know everybody sitting in this room and your classmates? Do they know your backgrounds, their families? Do you know theirs? Do you know me? Do I look any different? What did you expect me to look like? Next time you go to a store and you see someone who's elderly who's waiting on you, how do you know they're a Holocaust survivor? This usually will get these grade school kids' attention. They'll pay attention to your presentation. I end the presentation by asking them if they have any questions that they'd like me to respond to. And I get a lot of interesting questions. The most interesting one I received was recently where I first met Sandra. There was juniors and seniors in high school, and the young lady asked me, what would you say if a Holocaust denier came up to you and said he didn't believe the Holocaust took place? How would you respond? And I said to myself, so, of all the presentations you made, and all the questions you've been asked, you've never been asked this one. And it really threw me for a loop. And I stood there at the podium. I said, give me a moment to gather my thoughts. And I figured I had to respond to it. So I said, let me ask you all a question here. You're all high school students. Do you agree with my statement that history tends to repeat itself? And most of the audience shook their head yes. I said, go back 100 years, go back 500 years, history repeats itself. If we agree, let's go on this trip together. You and I are going to go back 90 years, and we're going to go to Germany. In Germany, about 90 years ago, there was an individual who gave a lot of presentations. He had a tremendous way of getting people riled up. He had no experience, no training in public speaking, but somehow or other came naturally. And he got everybody all riled up. They used to have what they called beer hall meetings. And every time he had a meeting, the audience got bigger and bigger, and he got everybody all excited and a big following. In 1932 or 33, Germany had a general election. And during that general election, this individual was elected as their, not the Prime Minister, Chancellor, thank you. He was elected the Chancellor, and you know what Hitler did as Chancellor after that. The rest is history. Now, I want you to think of what's going on in the world today. What do you see going around you today? Do you see any comparisons? If you do, I think it's our job to stop it from happening again. Therefore, if you agree that history repeats itself, be aware, because there are signs there we should pay attention to. Obviously, that was the only answer I could think of. At the end of the session, the teacher who organized it said, I saw you were really troubled by the question you were asked. I can't believe how you responded to it. So I said, why? What was wrong? What do I respond? He said, nothing wrong with it, but I teach Holocaust history in school here. And from now on, I want to use your example as opening my classes. I said, you don't have to ask permission, just use it. I think it's a good example. I think so myself. Anyway, I will leave, close it at that point and try to answer any questions anyone might have and try to respond to you the best I can. Obviously, when my mother came to reclaim me, she sent me to Hebrew school. And the truth be known, I don't know which I dislike more, going to Hebrew school every week or going to church every week. But the truth of the matter is I didn't care for either one. Yes?
You left out something important.
Go ahead.
The Harrisons and Yad Vashem.
Oh, yes. I was able to get the Harrisons into Yad Vashem. That was a very difficult project for me, but I was determined to do it. The force behind me was my son. My son happened to be in Israel in medical school, and he went to Yad Vashem, and he couldn't find any trace of the Harrisons. He called me up and he said, how come the Harrisons aren't in here? I said, what do I have to do to get them in here? He said, I'll send you the paperwork. And he said, if you don't get them in here, I'll never speak to you again. So that was a threat. And I did get him into Yad Vashem. As a matter of fact, my wife and I went to the induction ceremony. This is the medal that they give to everyone who's recognized at Yad Vashem in the righteous nations, along with the proclamation. This is the actual medal that they bestowed on Joseph Marie Harrison. A friend of mine who knew my background went to Israel on vacation. And about 5 years ago, I got a phone call one day at home. My friend Lynn said to me, you know, what's doing Florida? I said, nothing much. How about you, Lynn? He's a doctor in New York. I said, you'll never guess where I'm calling from. I said, I got two guesses. You're either at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City or at home. He said, neither one. I'm 7,000 miles away. I said, 7,000 miles away. As a matter of fact, I'm going to send you a picture. He took a picture of Harrison's name at Yad Vashem and sent it to me. Did I cover it? I'm glad my coach is here because I think that is an important part of my history.
Thank you, Alex. You were hilarious.
I told you tough people last. And I thank you so much, Alex, on behalf of Temple Bethel and our Dome Ed Committee, for Carol and Sam and Stanley and I. We just have a little token of appreciation for you and your wife, Roberta. Just some little Shabbos goodies for you. But it's remarkable. That's all. You're remarkable. And we thank you so much. I thank Nancy, I'm blowing a kiss, for suggesting that I call you up. So, we'll do two on Monday. Okay, I don't know if we can keep up this big space. But, you know, after Oneg, if you want to ask a question, I'm sure you'll have something to say.
I have a book if anybody wants to see some of the letters.
Yes.
Okay, our final hit tonight will be a beautiful, beautiful song that I'm sure many of you know, Eli, Eli. This was written, the words are written by Hannah Senish, who lived in the same kibbutz that I did. I knew people that knew her.
We ask you now just to please rise, stretch your legs, and there will be oneg following this.
She parachuted back into Hungary to try to save Jews during World War II. She was captured and executed at the age of 21. But she became a famous poet after she passed on. Eli, Eli, Shela yigamer le'olam, hakol ve'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, beherat hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, ha'ol ve'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, beherat hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash